Now we're ready.
Here we go. Now we're there. And we're moving and shaking and improving. And that is this week's topic, moving and improving on stage. I am one of your hosts, Brant Tobler.
I am Andrew Slater.
And we are back this week. Sorry, we're only doing one this week because we have wives and girlfriends. And Andrew was with his wife. And it was my girlfriend's birthday, so we were both on the road, so we couldn't do this, which will be an episode maybe we'll do next week. Being in a relationship in comedy, which is going to be an interesting one. But anyway, first of all, I just want to say thanks to everybody. Word of mouth has been great. You know, we appreciate you guys tweeting and telling your friends about it. The numbers keep going up, and I think people are enjoying it. We both get nice comments and emails and stuff, so I think it's helping, and we're glad. So please remember to rate, subscribe, review on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you listen to it, and subscribe on YouTube. And please tell your friends. We will continue to do it for free, but all we ask is you spread the good word. Today we're going to talk about moving and improvising on stage, both things we really excel at.
Yeah. Brant, you don't. I think I move more than you.
For sure. It's something it's a conscious decision. It's something I'm always working on, but I still could get much better at it.
But I evolved on that. I know that, I remember one time, I think it was this headliner came to Seattle, Corey Kahaney, I think it was. And she thought I was funny, but then I used to be so worried about moving on stage that I wouldn't take the mic out of the mic stand. Because in my head, it's just one more problem. If I take the mic out and the cord falls out, I don't want anything to happen. So if the mic is working and it's just sitting there, I wouldn't even adjust it to my height, right? Like if it was too low, I would just try to talk louder. Or if it was too high, I would like look up at it. But I wouldn't even trust myself to adjust the mic. And I went up there and it was too low. And I just did my thing where I talked louder. I remember Corey Kahaney off stage like, "What are you doing? You have to talk into the mic or else people can't hear you. Like you were very funny." She's like, "I thought you were very funny, but you're going to have big problems if you don't talk into the microphone." I was like, "Oh, okay. That's a good point." And I didn't have the balls to tell her like, "Oh, well, I'm afraid to pick up the microphone out of the mic stand," but
that's a whole nother episode. Picking up the microphone.
That's how frozen I was in one spot, was that I wouldn't even. So not only was I not moving back and forth on stage, I was leaving the mic in the mic stand and not touching the mic stand.
Yeah.
That's how I started.
I think when we both started, like guys like Dane Cook were like really blowing up, and he was all over the place. You know, he moved a lot, and there's a lot of different stuff that people do. And this just was never my style. And there's been plenty of times when earlier in my career, when I tried to adapt it, I was like, I'm going to be that wild and crazy guy. But I think it kind of goes back to what we said about your material. Just be yourself. If you're not being yourself, if you're not that dude that moves all over, don't try to be super animated if that's not you, don't you think?
Yeah, I do think, there's two things. There's one, you want to fit your style. So yeah, like you wouldn't want to go see Stephen Wright and then have him marching up and down the stage and doing cartwheels and humping the stool and all that stuff. Yeah, you know, so because you have a vision of Stephen Wright, and he's dry and he's slow. You know, he talks a little slower and he has a rhythm, and it fits him just standing there. You know, and like I'm trying to think of other comics who like famously don't even take the mic out of the mic stand. I think like Dennis Miller or whatever, but I think there's that, but then there's also just strategic reasons for both. I think there's strategic reasons for people to just stay still, because it can be powerful, right? Like you're making the audience come to you in a way. You're not going anywhere. You don't come off needy. You don't come off like, you know, desperately craving approval. You're like, I'm here, I'm doing my thing, I'm very relaxed, I'm very confident. You're either going to like it or not. And people usually like that, you know, like audiences are going to go, "Oh, this person knows what they're doing. I better listen up." So there's that. I think it's good to have a strategy behind it.
Well, I think that's a good point. There's a lot of comics I've seen where they just try to outperform their shitty material, where they just have
Yeah.
shitty jokes, but they try to run around. And the thing that's always stuck with me that keeps me always trying to move on stage is one time I heard Chris Rock say, uh, he's like, I keep moving because if you don't keep moving, if you just stay in one spot, the audience can zone out and then come right. And whenever they decide to come back, they'll feel like they didn't miss anything because you're still just right there in the same thing with the same tone. And a lot of it, that's another episode, is probably switching up tones, which is something we've talked about a million times. But I always thought that was an interesting point of like, yeah, if they did zone off for a second and then they came back and you're still right there doing the same thing, they probably felt like they didn't miss anything, which I thought was an interesting thing that he said.
Yeah, and like I think that's true. And Chris Rock is like the extreme end of it, you know, like, and I think about that quote a lot too, because it's true. Like you want to always like make the audience feel like if they miss 1 second of this, they're missing out. You don't want them to want to go to the bathroom. You don't want them to like look down at their phone. But there's other things that I think about moving too. It's like I've talked to people about like it's not just moving your body. It's not just like moving your like walking around side to side. Sometimes it's like changing your sight line. You know, sometimes it's like looking at different parts in the room. You know, looking at the front, looking at the back, checking in on every part of the room, I think is important. And I don't remember who said this. I can't remember who told me this, but it's something I've tried to think about. It's like you deliver the setup of the joke to one person and then the punchline to another. So like that's what I've thought about a lot. Is like, so I'll give my setup to someone here on the left side of the room, and then I can give the punchline to someone on the right side, and it kind of like ties everybody in, as well as being kind of a signal that like that was in case your joke isn't that good, that is like, well, at least the timing of it, people get the rhythm of the joke, you know.
Well, I know in like public speaking, they'll tell you to move, and then like when you come back to deliver it, always deliver like the punchline in the middle or like your point or whatever. And I've seen comics do that, but I like but sometimes you don't, if it's not that long of a joke. If you do, I like what you're saying. If you start over there and then you go over there, and the sightline thing is another thing I need to work on. Like do you make a lot of eye contact with the audience members?
When I'm going good, yes. Yeah. When I'm not, or when I feel like I don't like the room, or I don't like how I'm doing, or I know it's a bad set when I haven't like looked at anybody.
See, that's how I'm staring out over their head into the darkness a lot. But that's another thing I like to tell myself to move, because then I am kind of forced to not just stare into that one black spot above the crowd. Then I do go right to left and make eye contact and draw people in and do that.
Well, and it's like some comics I've seen, and the first few times I saw this, I was like always blown away. But when they would get off the stage, like some comics move around so much, they like walk into the crowd. I was like, oh my God, that like terrified me. The idea, because the stage is like the one advantage I felt like I had over these people. It's like, okay, I'm up here, you're down there. That's a clear signifier that I'm supposed to be here. But the second you get off the stage, it's like anybody could be doing what I'm doing, you know. Like you could just take the microphone from me and now you're the comedian. So it really requires you to be that much funnier than everybody else in the room. But I've seen it done where, you know, like Rory Scovel, or people like have legendary sets when they move not even around the stage, but like off the stage, into the crowd, into the hallway, into the kitchen, whatever. It's like, those are some of like the craziest sets I've ever seen, and some of the most memorable.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that makes a crowd think they're seeing something for the first time they've never seen before, which the more you see guys like that, they go, oh, they do this shit all the time. It still works. And it takes a lot of confidence. I agree with you. But that's another level of moving. Like you can go. I mean, there's been times when I didn't have people in the front row where I've stepped off stage and stood on chairs or messed like that. That's just a confidence thing that'll come. But that's something you see other people do. I'm like you. I remember the first time someone did that. I was like, "You're not supposed to do that." Like it was a dog with like the electrical shocker. Like,
well, they teach you that
if you go that.
Yeah, I was taught that. Like, you never never give up the stage, because like all those things I was saying before, like it's a big advantage that you have, and you never let anybody else up on the stage. That was the other thing. It's like, don't bring a crowd member on stage, or don't let them have their feet on the stage or whatever, because it's like, this is supposed to be like your sacred dojo sort of thing. And if you bring audience members into it, it's like, oh, it loses the specialness or something.
Yeah. It just will be chaos.
There are no, like we always say, there are no rules. Like I said, some of the funniest things I've ever seen is when comics go off the stage and into the crowd or whatever. And it isn't always good. I've seen it be stupid, and comics try to go into the crowd and then they start interviewing people. I'm not talking about like, all right, now it's for the audience participation portion of the show, and you walk into the crowd and stick your mic into somebody's face, and what do you do for a living, sir? That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's a little more spontaneous.
I mean, that's just a good point. Like, that's just something, just like tactically, like if you don't know how long the cord is, you don't know how long when the mic's going to cut out. So even stuff like that on stage, you kind of got to, I mean, it's a good thing to watch and see. Like, I know when we go to a club for the first time, that first night, you get your bearings of like, okay, I could walk into the crowd, or I can't even go this far on the stage. Part of that, nothing will upset a set more than if you are trying to move a lot and you just yank the cord out. Or
even worse, when you have a cordless mic and you think, oh, I have unlimited range, I can go wherever I want. It's like, you probably have less range with a cordless mic than you do with a corded mic. I hate cordless mics. I hate them because there's nothing worse than when you start cutting out. Like you're a little too far away from the receiver, the batteries aren't as good or something, and you're dropping every third word. It is the most frustrating set of your life.
Yeah.
Because people are so distracted.
There's been countless times when that cordless mic just cuts out and I just say, screw it. I'll go a cappella and just yell louder, because there's nothing will mess up a flow than the oh, I hate that.
And I think it's horrible for the audience too. Like, you don't want to listen. It's like having your CD player broken or something. So
so as we talk about moving and the freedom that can come from going in the crowd and how much the crowd will like it, also take into consideration, because it'll go good until that mic cuts out, and then it'll be shitty real fast.
No, there's just there are like tactical things to think about. And then also, like, one thing I guess we haven't talked about is like the size of the stage. So sometimes if you have a really small stage, then like moving can be like super effective, because any movement you take, and not just, don't think of it just like walking. When I first thought about moving on stage, it was like side to side, right? Like, let me walk to the left side, then I'll walk to the right side, then I'll stop in the middle, then I'll go to the right. Like, but that's not the most effective movement. The most effective movement, I think, is back and forth. As in front, like to the back of the stage and to the front of the stage. Because when you take that step towards, when I get heckled or something, or I just notice like commotion or whatever, something's happening, or it's too quiet or whatever, I'm not connecting with I always walk right at it. I take like a step towards it, and it like it's like you're coming through the screen into their room, and they're like, oh shit, he's here. And it really locks people in. So I think that movement, when you walk right at them, is the most important. When you have a small stage and you you've probably done it without thinking about it. I mean, I can picture you doing it, but you just take that step up or put your foot up on the amp or something, or just like lean at them a little bit on a small stage, that locks people in quite a bit.
Well, another comic told me that one time. He goes, because I would watch him, and this is something you should do. The comics you like, you should watch them, and watch what they do. I think that's probably the next episode we're going to do talk about. But he told me the same thing. He goes, if you ever watch Elvis would come to the front of the stage, and like, because I'd watch him do a set, and he would come to the back, and then he would do what you were saying, not as much move left to right, but move up and back. And I think that's a great point where you said you're coming through the curtain, like, boom, here I am. Which I don't know if we talked about on the hecklers one, but that goes back to that. When a table or something's loud, you go at them right into them. And
it's like a good running back. You don't want them east and west. You want to go north and south. You know, pick up those tough yards. So it's like, I that's true. And then
Well,
And then
real quick on that, real quick before that, that kind of makes me think sometimes. I think when I go back, it's kind of like gaining momentum towards the punchline. Like
yeah,
almost like, okay, here we go. We're back towards the back of the stage. And here I come with what I'm going to hit you in the face with the big punchline.
right. And like there's nothing more, again, it gets back to like showing confidence, because they always say never turn your back to the stage. But you know, there is something very confident about like seeing a comic turn their back and walk towards the back because they know they have the crowd, you
Yeah.
know, and then turn around and like give a look, and maybe they're going back to get their water or whatever. But it just shows a level of like comfortability and casualness that's very, you're like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. I like walking. I actually like turning my back and walking away from, but still saying stuff kind of like we're
Right.
still going, but I'm, you know,
And it can almost
I
be like a different voice. It's like when you're saying stuff walking away, it's like little stream of consciousness stuff, you know, that's not even
yeah.
like, I don't know. I know exactly what you mean. I think that is really funny.
But what I think you nailed the key word there is, and when you see people moving more, you think they're more confident, and that comes off as confident. That standing there, that can, and like you said, there's different styles, and you're going to find your style, because I think what you started with, there is something to be said when you just sit there and you nail the jokes, and you know you don't have to do a bunch of gimmicks. And we're not saying like do crazy shit, but I mean, you can. Again, we're never going to tell you not to do anything. That's why I hate to be like, in my head, I'm like, don't do this. I'm like, oh, that shit kills those. I mean, like people would have told Rory, don't go out into the crowd. No, I've seen people climb stuff. And then, I mean, I think that just comes, it shows confidence. And then it shows what we've talked about before. The crowd thinks they're seeing something for the first time. So we're never going to discourage you to take chances. But I do think the more I move, and I agree with you, I think the more I'm moving, that's when I'm doing better. That's when I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
Like I'm jiving. Here we go. I'm dancing around the ring like a fighter. And when I'm not in my element or showing confidence, I'm just sitting there kind of like, please don't hit me in the face, you know?
Yeah. I think either way, if your thing is going to be like to be more stationary or whatever, or it's going to be that I'm going to move around a lot, be very physical and stuff, whatever it is, you know, think it out. Just as long as it's thought out, and if you do it confidently, you're going to get results. It's just there are tactical, like we said, there's just like tactical reasons to move a little bit to keep. And like I said, it doesn't always have to be with your feet. You can move with your eyes, you can move with your head, you know, your shoulder angles, whatever.
Yeah.
Just it's moving, I think, is less about like taking up certain spots on the stage, and it's more about acknowledging the entire room that you're playing. So it's like there's people in the back left, in the back middle, the back right, middle, front, right? And you want to make sure at some point you're trying to engage, I think, with every part of the room. And that requires either moving your eyes, moving your head, or your body, or moving at them, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point. Like, let's say you move to the right side of the stage and then you want to connect with the people in the back. Maybe you raise an arm out towards them, like you're pointing to them and bringing them back in. Or I agree. Yeah. Like, I think I initially thought moving was like just feet, just moving side to side. But there's so much more of like, even, I mean, you could squat, anything that move.
Yeah, that's a great, the squat, people, you know, some comics like strategically sit down for parts of their set, and I think that is too just about changing dynamics, is just shaking people up. And that gets back to that Chris Rock quote where it's like, if you look down for 3 seconds, you look up, you feel like you missed something. That's the whole idea. You want to make people feel like they can't stop watching. So I think whatever you can do to convey that is good.
And it can start gradually. You don't, you know, like there's been times when I was like, I'd go over my material and go, here's somewhere I could do something, like even small act outs, you know, as far as like moving, like I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head, but even just like a karate kick on stage, if it fits in or something, it's just like fun, and it'll show you're having, you know, the movements can just show you're having fun and you're confident, and then you're
I'll tell you, I watched somebody recently who I would have never guessed was physical, but then it was amazing how how many laughs she got out of her movement was Wanda Sykes. I
Uh-huh.
saw her latest special. It was very funny. But then I was just, the whole time I was watching, I was like, man, she's getting a lot of laughs just out of like the act outs,
Uh-huh.
and not the work. You just like moving, just the
Yeah.
visual of it. And I would have never thought, I always thought of Wanda Sykes more like cerebral, kind of, a joke Smith or what, and she is, but like, I just wouldn't have put it together in my head. But then you see that's why she's probably so great, because she's got like every tool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, for instance, the one I was thinking of is like when I say I throw something on stage, to actually lean back and pretend like I'm throwing something, definitely added to. It was such a simple thing, but I just didn't do it for so long, to the point where I finally like went through my act almost like I was punching up my material. And this is what you can do, is go through your act and go, okay, here's a place. Maybe I want to move forward here. Maybe I can do something with my hands or my feet, or even something simple as like just standing up on your toes. It could
Right.
be so simple, if that is part of your joke. If you walk to your right and you stop, plant, and then you just come up on your toes, that's something that'll just cause an action. And
Well,
again, like every episode here, I'm just like, God, I need to do all of this more than what I'm doing.
I know. And like my last album, it's called The Great Backsby, and I have that long joke, about like being an extra for Leonardo DiCaprio, but basically the whole idea is like the back of my head is what's in this movie as like a double for Leonardo DiCaprio, and then when I was first doing the joke, I didn't turn around to show him the back of my. But then that became a huge punchline for me. It was just turning around. That was it. That was the whole joke. Because me just turning around. I set it up, and then I remember in Vegas, I was talking about the joke with somebody, and then I added this tag about I can do any movie, and that he's in, and I have him yell out whatever they say. They always say Titanic, right? And then I just start sinking down from the back of my head. It's like, so it's again, as I say nothing, it's just two movements, and it gets big,
but it gets huge laughs. Yeah.
And
I remember the first time.
Oh yeah,
go ahead. No.
Well, my favorite joke, like, it's not even really a joke, but one of the jokes I've watched more than anything is the Sebastian Ross Dress for Less joke. Do you know the one? I think we probably watched it together like 50,000 times.
So it's his
first, and it's not like he's like, just talk like Ross, and it looks like a bomb went off in there. It's like, how do these people shop? And he just picks up a thing, and then he does this giant crow hop outfielder's throw of like an underwear, and it's just that act out makes me laugh harder than almost any joke I've ever seen.
That's a great little homework. If you haven't watched it, just Google Sebastian he's just Sebastian now, but TJ Maxx Ross thing. And I agree, that's the first time I really saw somebody. It wasn't the moving, the pacing, what you initially. No,
because he does all that other extra stuff too, and that's fine. That's who he is, whatever. But this one specific joke, I think, is like such a good example of how you could elevate something from just like a totally, a very funny observation that I think a lot of comics have made, and then just separate yourself into being like the defining Ross joke.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, because he does a lot now. He does a little too much for my liking, honestly. Like, I think he really tries to do a little, I don't know. I think but I got to open for him when he was doing that bit in front of like 100 people in a small club in Vegas. And that thing, and I don't know if anything ever crushed like that. And that was like, but it was like really part of the joke where, I mean, Sebastian is huge, and maybe he has to do over act outs because he's playing arenas, and for somebody in a 20,000
you couldn't even do that act out on like half the comedy club stages in the world. It's too big.
Yeah.
He needs like theater stages just to exist, Well,
yeah, that's true. You're going to have to adapt to what stage you're on, or if, but I think I agree with you. That's the first time I was like, oh, he's really like that. The act outs were better than the jokes in the beginning. Then it all came together as one. But yeah, that's a legendary act out for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's more of the moving. Like, that's a great example of, once again, I think when you think moving, it has to just be right to left and like you said, I don't even think a lot of people think the front to back thing.
Yeah.
But you know, another guy I worked with is Tom Rhodes, and he has like a pattern. If you ever watch Tom Rhodes, it feels like he goes in like a star. Like he'll start a joke and then he'll go back, up, front. Like it's fascinating to watch, but it's definitely something I think he's thought out and it works for him.
He's so like confident, you know, he almost like struts around the stage.
Yeah.
You know,
and he has a little bounce to him too as he's doing it. And it definitely works for him, but that's another one you should watch is Tom Rhodes. And if you watch enough of it, you'll see, oh, he's going to start this joke in the front right corner, and then he's going to go back and over and up and back and then middle. And it's like, but he's moving the whole time, but it feels like it's it's fun to watch because then I kind of start jiving with him like, then it kind of rolls with what he's doing.
It's like a boxer, you know, and you stay engaged and he keeps your attention, you know. I think there's just a million ways you can either A, get laughs, or B, keep people's attention with movement, you know. But I don't want people to listen and go, oh, but I have a whole thing where I just stand behind the microphone and and I don't take the mic out of the stand. That's fine. But I think there's some things you can do even from there. Like we said, changing your eye level. You can move the mic stand. You can grab the mic stand and move it around. Like even Dennis Miller in the early days, he would like lean the mic stand back and forth like that. That's like his version of moving, you know? So there's a lot of things.
Yeah. But I think it'll always come back to that Chris Rock thing for me is just like doing stuff. Quote. Make you and obviously he would know much more than we would about it, but I always keep that with me of like that makes total sense. So even if they zone out for a minute, then they're like if you're keeping moving in some regards, you're going to be like, oh, I'm not going to zone off again because I don't know what just happened. I feel like I missed out, which is cool.
Yeah.
So I think we didn't really talk about. I mean, I guess
moving.
We called it. Yeah, let's keep it moving. I would call this episode "Moving and Improvising," but I think we touched on the improvising of the movement. I guess would be a better title for this one.
Well, yeah, we can talk about improvising more too.
Why don't we just save that for another one? We'll just retitle this. Just moving on stage. Okay. Because I think there's a lot more improvising can go in so many directions.
Yeah. All right.
But like you said, we'll keep it moving to the next episode. But hope that answered your questions. Keep it moving. Keep put on a show. Please subscribe, rate, review, tell your friends. As always, if you have questions or want us to talk about something, send it in the comments. We've seen all your comments. We're definitely going to get to like marketing and branding yourself and stuff like that. But we're trying to do the things we're good at first. Yeah.
And then work our way to the things
we can't answer stuff we don't really know how to do, but we are reading the comments, and thank you for all the shout outs and thanks for telling your friends. So keep it moving on stage, and we'll talk to you next week. I'm Brant Tobler.
I'm Andrew Slater.
See ya.
See ya.